Hello, Sea Wolves, and good morning, well, or good afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. For me, it's very early in the morning because today I have to drive for my, my real job as an art dealer. I have to do some art deliveries in Germany today. So I got a good friend of mine. He looks just like me, just about 4 years younger, to do an amazing video for you guys today, which is all about the 5 dangers of the Southern Ocean. Because as we're moving into the Southern Ocean, I thought it would be really nice to go very specifically over the real dangers that the sailors are going to be facing over the next 5-6 weeks as they cruise their way through this, well, harshest of all harsh environments. So we made that video previously and I added a whole bunch of details to it again now to prepare for today. So enjoy my earlier version of myself explaining these 5 dangers, and I'll catch you all tomorrow for the question and answer episode. Enjoy! So today I wanted to dive into something quite different. I want to talk about the real dangers of the Southern Ocean, because the race is moving into this kind of famous, infamous space, and I thought it would be cool to do a bit of a nerd out and really look at what specifically it is that makes the Southern Ocean so interesting and at the same time so dangerous. Now, the interesting part, that's easy because there's just lots and lots and lots of wind there. So, we can be pretty short about that. So it's basically a sailor's paradise. Most of the time there is just 25 to 35 knots there, just most of it like all the time. So yeah, you can imagine why a sailor would like to sail there, because it just doesn't get any better than that, right? Now, the interesting thing about the weather though, and that's kind of the first part, the first real danger that I want to talk about, is of course the cold. But what specifically about the cold? Now, I know a little bit about this because I live in Amsterdam, and we're talking, when we're talking about the Southern Ocean, we're talking about the roaring 30s and the 40s and the 50s. But my country, Amsterdam, is actually around the 40th degrees latitude, just on the other side of the globe. But our climate, so the climate that I'm in right now, is actually quite comparable to the climate of, say, South Africa, for example. Now, the climate at sea, of course, is quite different. So, if there's some keyboard warrior saying, oh yeah, but it's at sea, it's a total different climate. I understand that at sea it's a little bit different than on land, but the key to this type of latitude on our planet is really the humidity. And so the thing, with Amsterdam, with Holland, with South Africa, but basically with the 30s, 40s, 50s, is it's not just cold, because the temperature there is generally somewhere between, just above freezing, so 0, 1, 2, 3 degrees, something like that, up to maybe 9 or sometimes even 10 or 11, maybe 12 degrees if it's a sunny day with not too much wind. So there might definitely be moments in the Southern Ocean when some of them may go outside and just like when you're skiing, for example, wanting to open their jacket and just enjoy the sunshine. That's totally possible at this locations, but at the same time it can also be very, very cold. And what I mean by that specifically is, so I've been in situations where, the temperature is minus 20, minus 25. Coldest I've been in is about minus 20, minus 32 in the winter in Moscow. And so that's really, really cold. That's extremely, extremely cold, and you have to really dress for it. And when you breathe, when you're outside in those temperatures, you have to keep something in front of your mouth and nose, and you have to breathe in really slowly, because if you breathe in too quick, you can literally instantly freeze your lung, basically. It's that cold. But the interesting thing is that, many of our friends, some of them who are Russian, who grew up in Russia, they when they're living in Holland or staying here, they say the winters here are just so cold, it just feels horrible. And it really doesn't get so cold in here. Like the most of the winters we see temperatures around 0, pretty much the same as what you see in the Southern Ocean around the areas where the sailboats will be going. And the reason for that is the extremely high humidity. So humidity here is generally something like 60% to sometimes 85%, really, really crazy. And so the thing that does is that humidity largely transmits heat, transmits temperature. So water is a really great conductor of temperature. That's why we boil in water, for example. And it's also the reason why when there's a high humidity, the human body really
fluctuates with the temperature of the environment very easily, because we're obviously made 85% out of water. So when you go in a sauna, for example, and somebody pours some water or some oil on the burner, what happens is you see this big, cloud of vapor, like, and then you get this real heat wave throughout the whole sauna. If you've ever, done like a pouring ritual in the sauna, you know what I'm talking about. Now, has the temperature in the sauna increased very much? No, actually, mostly it stays the same when you do, a little pouring. But what has changed is that the humidity in the room has shot up, because you're just, basically vaporizing all this water on the element, increasing the humidity in the room. And we experience that as humans as this giant increase in heat, this giant increase in temperature, when what's really increasing is actually just the humidity. But the humidity makes us much more susceptible to that temperature. And when it's cold, it's kind of sucking the heat out of us. And when it's hot, it's just kind of pouring the heat into us, because we are in connection with the water around us. And so the tricky thing about the cold, the first kind of challenge of the 30s, 40s, and 50s and sailing around Antarctica this way, is that the temperature that they're going to be seeing are going to be similar to here. So maybe 0 degrees, sometimes slightly below, but most of the time 2, 3, 4, sometimes 6, 7, maybe up to like 11 degrees in the day. Not super cold, but because of the high humidity, it's a type of cold that just sucks the heat like right out of your bones. Just, almost impossible weather to bike in or move in. When you go outside here in the winter, sometimes just for a walk, after 5 minutes you just have this sheen of like, water droplets because of the cold that just kind of, condensate on your skin, making it just clammy and cold, and it just gets in everywhere. And that is the type of cold that they are going to be sailing in. And now add big waves of water coming over the boat. The amount of moisture and the combination with the cold makes it just absolutely horrible. And they're going to be in this particular, temperature and humidity range for 3, maybe 4 weeks or so. That's really, really intense, not to be underestimated. So that's kind of the first challenge, is the cold temperature. Now the second one is ice, and yeah, that's not very complicated. Most of the time they won't see any ice, because they have these ice gates, like an exclusion zone, where the race control determines, based on satellite images and stuff, that there should be not great amounts of ice around. But it's always possible for a small ice boulder to be overlooked. It's a big ocean after all, and so yeah, we'll see what happens. We hope everything is okay, but it can always happen that they hit ice, and so that's always going to be a real danger during this race. But the real interesting danger, that is like the cause of so many other dangers, are the waves. Because the waves generally at this latitude are absolutely huge. And the reason for that is that the 30s, 40s, and 50s on the southern hemisphere are basically the only place on the planet where a wave can be formed and then go around the entire planet without ever hitting any landmass. So that particular ring around the planet, there is for the most part just no land in it at all. And it's the only place on the planet where that can happen. And so waves, storms that build up can just roam around. And that creates a very unique, very huge sea state there, making the boat constantly go up and down and up and down. And they're mostly going to be sailing downwind, but that at the speeds that they're going at, sometimes quite a bit faster than the waves, you can get this real sort of skating up a ramp and then flying over the ramp and then slamming, back on and then kind of skating down, which creates this constant slamming motion on the boat. Now they're obviously going to be tired, they're going to be cold because of the lack of sleep, of the movement, maybe seasickness, etc. And these waves are so big and violent that the boat is going to be basically slamming at a speed of say 25 knots into these kind of waves, with the kind of flat bottom of the boats creating a huge slam every time. And it's almost comparable to crashing a car at a speed of say 30 miles an hour or something. So in kilometers, that's like going maybe 40 or 50 kilometers per hour. That's quite a crash. Now imagine that in this area where there's almost always wind, where the boat is almost always going at a close to maybe maximum speed that they can go because they're racing, and it's you know, you're experiencing something like a car crash maybe once or twice every minute, every 2 minutes. You know, you have like the general crashes, but every minute, every 2 minutes, you have, you know, at least 1 or 2 really big slams for days and days and days. Now imagine the power that you're going to need to constantly brace yourself for that, and the danger that kind of arises from, you know, that one moment when you weren't quite ready for it, or you were sitting down but you weren't quite in a stable position. Literally every moment during this particular part of the trip, they are at extreme risk of falling over, injuring themselves. We've seen it with the Volvo Ocean edition last time, now called the Ocean Race. In the first 2 days, we had a broken wrist, broken ankle, somebody bruising ribs, all from basically falling over, falling down, the boat making an unexpected movement, and you know, they're breaking or injuring something. So you've seen what it looks like and sounds like on the outside. I'm sure that you guys also like to hear what it sounds like on the inside, because it is quite a cool sound. And as you can see, we're really on a lean here. Let me go to the best place to listen, which is here in the front. Oh, sorry, Captain. Just letting the folks at home hear how beautiful it sounds in here.
Good noises here, welcome to my office.
I'm going to put this to the hall now so you can get all the sensations. Actually quite easy to sleep to this. It's the right amount of random, huh?
It's perfect. I should make it into a tape and sell it.
Yeah, literally, exactly, yes. We are going to make it into a tape called Childhood Sleeping Nursery Rhymes.
A sailor's dream.
A sailor's dream, exactly. And it's just going to be this sound to fall asleep to. Because this is kind of what my view is from my bunk. Now, tell me that doesn't look like I'm on board of a Klingon warbird. So we have grab rails here all around to hang on to. You kind of feel a little bit like Tarzan swinging around sometimes. But it works. Yeah, I'm literally hanging by the bar right now. And now for climbing out. This little pedestal to step into. And there we are. Laura's on the wheel right now. On a good lean. But those were teams. In the Vendeglobe, they're alone. So imagine if you have a problem with your wrist or with an ankle or with a finger or anything like that. Even a small injury can mean a ton of additional problems that kind of flow from that original injury. And so that makes the responsibility that the sailors are carrying for their own personal safety to constantly brace, to constantly be very, very careful not to injure themselves, that higher. Add to that the temperature, the humidity, the constant movement. It's really, really quite grueling. And the second part that's kind of dangerous from the waves is what we've seen, you know, the damage, for example, to Alex Thompson. We have linked out now with the damaged foil. We don't know if they actually hit anything in the water or if that just happened from the stress of constantly, you know, crashing into waves, the constant movement and the forces that that create. But we do know that Alex Thompson especially went very close to the heart of Tida. So, you know, this was a storm where the biggest winds that he reported was around 50 knots, 52 knots, I believe. And the biggest sea state he was in was probably about 4.5 meters. At least that's what the data shows, 4.5 to 5 meters. That's pretty big seas. But that was for 1.5 days. And most likely the damage that he experienced, that he had to fix over the last few days, started there. Now imagine that the boat and all of the new boats are going to be in circumstances that are not unlike Storm Tida, little less extreme, but quite close to that sea state. 4 to 5 meter waves, 35 to 45 knots of wind, pretty similar, right? but they're going to be in those circumstances for days and days and days, probably between 3 and 4 weeks of it. That's what happened in 1.5 days. So imagine the amount of stress that's going to put on the structure, constantly riding down waves, slamming into waves, going up waves, etc. Right? So that's a massive, massive danger also. And lastly, the thing that really is the, the boat killer, the thing that all the captains have to be extremely careful to prevent, is the broach, or the Chinese or accidental jibe. And this is really the thing that, if you look at pivotal moments in earlier Vendeeglobes or Volvo Ocean races or whatever, whenever there are masts breaking or booms breaking off or people flying overboard, almost always this has to do with broaching, Chinese jibing, or accidental jibes, which are 3 words for the same thing. And basically what it means is that when you tack the boat, so say the wind is coming from here, I'm sailing this way and I tack the boat, then I put the nose of the boat into the direction of the wind, the sails flap a bit, and then I have power again and I'm moving the other direction. But when you jibe, intentionally, you're turning with the wind. So the wind is coming from here, we're sailing like this, and at some point we say, okay, now we're going to switch over. But the switchover moment for the mainsail when you're jibing is incredibly precarious and crucial, because you have this boom that has to swing from one side to the other. And my boom on my boat is 4.5 meters. So imagine that it's on one side of the boat and it has to swing all the way to the other side of the boat. That's a length of about 8 meters, right? So that's a giant amount of space to swing in, to take that wave, that space, and just build up a lot of speed and power and momentum, and then crash onto the other side. Now, I don't actually know the length of the booms on these boats, but the masts are generally in the middle. The boats are about 18 meters long, so the general boom on an IMOCA is probably something like, 7 meters, 6 meters, something like that, maybe a little bit longer than that. Excuse me for the experts if I didn't look that up before this video. But that's a giant amount of swing to build up a giant amount of power. And I'll show you some videos in the background here while I'm talking of accidental jibes happening. And basically this is the sailor's worst nightmare, because when you're sailing in big waves, basically the waves are always coming straight with the wind, right? So we're sailing at a bit of an angle to the wind, never straight into it. And so you're going up a wave like this at a bit of an angle, but then at the crest you have to kind of straighten the boat a little bit. And then as soon as you start going down, you put it at an angle again, because it's very uncomfortable for a boat to kind of go over the edge on an angle, and it's kind of risky. So you want to straighten it out a little bit as you go over the crest. That's just how you sail waves. But at that moment when you're straightening out the boat, you're always in danger of straightening it out just a little bit too much. And I'm sure there are a few fellow sailors watching this, maybe confirm in the comments for me if you're hearing this, where it almost happens, right? You're going up a wave, everything is fine, you're at the wheel, and then you're going just that tiny, can be like an inch too far. And like when your mainsail is nicely under power, and then all of a sudden you see the power kind of go out of your mainsail, and it makes that knock, like ka-ding, ka-ding, where oh shit, uh-oh, like that's the announcement, and 1 or 2 seconds later it can instantly go whoop and just fly to the other side. And the moment you see what happens to the mainsail and you hear that ka-ding, ka-ding, all the alarm bells in a sailor's mind are going off at that moment, and you're just running the wheel to the opposite direction, going no, 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 just trying to prevent this, because the force of the slam can rip a boom straight from the mast. It can break a mast in two if you're especially unlucky. It can rip the sail track, so the track that the sail is kind of secured to the mast in, like right out of the mast. And all these things have happened in many Vendeeglobes and Volvo Ocean Race and Whitbreads before that. So it is just a dangerous, dangerous thing to happen. And the fact that we're constantly downwind sailing in the Southern Ocean for the most part, in strong winds and big waves, makes it the perfect place to accidental jibe. And many of the boats will accidental jibe. And it's just the most horrible thing that can happen, because they have to sleep on board. So I once heard a story from a Dutch guy actually who was sailing the Vendeeglobe who had an accidental jibe while he was sleeping. And so imagine all the weight, all the systems, all your ballast is on the wrong side, right? You're using all that to flatten your boat out. So if this is my boat, like to the length, and you have all your weight here to flatten your boat out. And all of a sudden, the sail flips to the other side. And now all the weight, all the ballast is on the wrong side, making the boat absolutely almost fall completely over. And if that happens while you're asleep, or if you weren't like paying attention at the sail in that particular moment, it is shocking. It's all of a sudden, the boat is almost upside down. If you were standing on the high side of the boat, you're maybe hanging on to something because you lost your footing, and you have to kind of find your way down. You have to get outside, you have to, you know, let go of the sheet of the main to depower it so you can ride the boat again. There's just so much you have to do. Maybe you have to transfer some of the weight back in order to get the boat, you know, through the center of the wind to set the sails on the right side again. And so this one maneuver, this one thing that they're constantly at risk of this happening, can be so destructive for the boat. And the environment of the Southern Ocean is an environment where all of the power inputs to the boats are, for the most part, set to the maximum amount. So you have a maximum amount of waves, maximum amount of wind, and you're constantly trying to, you know, hit the boat as the fastest speed that you can manage as a sailor. So add all of that up. Cold, icebergs, big waves, constant movement, tired, maybe seasickness, and then the constant danger of broaching, of accidental gybing. And this for a, you know, extended time period of probably 3 or a little bit more weeks for all of the sailors involved. And that really, I think, paints a picture of the heroism and the danger, you know, the crazy level danger that these sailors are facing as they go around the world. And so what are some of the safety systems that all of these skippers have on board? Now, of course, they all have a life raft, and they all have something akin to an EPIRB. So that's a beacon that they can activate. It automatically activates when it gets into water. Should they go overboard, they usually have it, you know, on their person. But it basically sends out a GPS signal constantly so that you know, rescuers can find out where they are. And in the Southern Ocean, I imagine that most of them are tethered onto the boat pretty much constantly. So we had a discussion about that earlier, but in the Southern Ocean, pretty much everybody agrees that you should be tethered to the boat basically at all time, because it's just the only way to make sure that hopefully, hope to God, that you don't go overboard. Then of course, the real safety net is each other, because I showed in an earlier video, I'll put it here also again, the overview of marine traffic. There are basically almost no boats in the entire Southern Ocean. At that latitude, there are like 20, maybe 25 boats in the entire ocean at any given time. So the closest rescue that any of the skippers have is their fellow racers. And so there's a big tradition, both in the Vendee, but also in the Volvo, in the Ocean Race, the Whitbread, all throughout history, that no matter what happens, safety is first. And so if anything happens to any of the skippers or any of the boats, generally the two boats that are closest to that boat will be called with the information, with the location, and wherever they are, even if they're in first position, they will immediately divert their course and help their fellow skippers out, because there literally is nobody else to do it. And I think that that is, you know, a really beautiful tradition, and it has happened that people have, you know, given up first place, second place, third place, podium places to go and save you know, somebody's life essentially. And also that there have been podium places awarded to people because they had to abandon the race to help somebody while they were, for example, in third or in second place. So yeah, I hope that you know, paints a picture for you all of the type of situation that the skippers are moving into now and will be, you know, working and operating in for the next 3 weeks or so. I hope that you're all very excited for it. And yeah, that's basically what I wanted to talk about today, what I have time for to talk about today. Look forward to the show tomorrow. We're going to talk a lot more about the Jules Verne tomorrow also, and of course we'll do a big update on, you know, the state of the race and everything that happened throughout this week. So look forward to that, and you know, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you want to back and patron the channel, help me grow, please go to SeawolvesTV.com.
Yeah, I got this younger version of myself. So hope you enjoyed that. Make sure to like and subscribe, and see you tomorrow for the regular update. Ciao, ciao.